Okay, this video is called Working with Menus, and it's called Working with Menus because we're going to highlight three specific areas that deal with menus. One is how to hide the menu items that you never use. One is highlighting menu items that make them easier to find. And one is how to create keyboard shortcuts. So if you think about it, as you move along in your learning of Photoshop and begin to work with it a little bit more, you're going to come across some menu items that you will never use. And to make it easier for you to find those things you do use, Photoshop or Adobe has made it a simple procedure to go in and hide those items that you never ever use. And let's say that you have items that you use constantly, and it would be nice if you had a keyboard shortcut. Same thing, Adobe makes it fairly simple for you to create those shortcuts to be able to get to menu items fairly quickly. And then there are items that you use on occasion, but you never can find them because you can't remember where they are because you only use them every now and then. That would be by highlighting those menu items to make them easier to find. It gives you a more smooth workflow to be able to go find those and use them. So we're going to start off with how to hide menu items. So in this case, if you never use Adobe Creative Cloud, or maybe you do but you never send out things to ask others to edit, then there's a fairly new item here in the file menu that's called invite to edit. So let's say you want to hide that because you will never use it and probably even share for a review. Let's say you don't use those two items. So the way that you would hide those is if you go to edit and go down here to menus, or you could use the option shift control menu or M to go there as a shortcut. But we'll just click right here and go to the menus dialog box. Now you'll notice this is the exact same dialog box where it says keyboard shortcuts, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But we want to make sure that it says menus, that the menus tab is selected here, and application menus is what we're going to be changing. These up here are the application menus. You also have sets of menus on the panels. We'll get to the panels later, but there are menu items there that you can also go in and change. You can either hide or any of the other things that we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about at this point just application menus. Over here is a set, and what a set is basically a way to save your changes. So you can save your changes to be specifically for you, so that whenever you open this, it always goes to that set of changes. Now you can change the Photoshop defaults, but you probably don't want to do that because you may, again, mess something up, want to go back to the start. So you want to keep your Photoshop default. So any changes we're going to make in here, we're going to save them to a new name. So you can notice here that the structure here is the same structure that we have up above. File, edit, image, layer, and so on. File, edit, image, layer. So all you have to do is open the file section and you'll see everything in here that you see when you click on the file menu. And what we want to do is scroll down till we see where it says to send out for edit or send out for review. And I think we've gone too far. It's in here. Here we go. Invite to edit and share for review. All we need to do is come over here where it says visibility and turn off the eyeballs. Now you'll notice up here in the set it says modified. Photoshop defaults are modified. Down below here you have three thumbnails. This first one is here if you want to save the change to the current set. We don't want to do that. We want to create a new set. If you hover over here, it says create a new set based on the current set of menus. So we're going to click here, and it's going to open this big dialog box, and you're going to change it from Photoshop defaults to something else. So in our case, we're going to do RTPC Photoshop Learning. Click on Save, and now notice that's the set that we're using. So now if we click OK, we come back up here to File. Notice that those are no longer listed in your file here, or in your menu. If, however, we go, oh, that's something new, somebody just asked me to do that, and you want to do it, all you have to do is come down here where it says Show All Menu Items. When you click on that, suddenly everything appears. So anytime you hide an item in the menus and you want to see it again, all you have to do is click that Show All Menus, and it will show you all the menus. Now, I would be willing to bet that there are many items in here that you will never use. So this is a good way to pare this down. You can also do it on submenu items out here. If you're never going to save for the web using this functionality, you can turn that off and hide it. Any of these kinds of things, you can come in to this Generate Assets you probably won't use, turn that off. So there's lots of things in here that will make it much easier, much more simple for you when you're working with Photoshop. So you could pare these, see how long some of these menus are. You could come in here and pare a lot of these down where you don't see those menus, those menu items all the time. And again, like I said, if you decided you want to see them, all you have to do is go down and click on the Show All Menus, and it will do that. So that's a good, easy way to, and it's very simple, very easy to understand way to hide menu items so that it doesn't clutter up the things. So now let's say that you occasionally use a menu item and you know approximately where it is, but it's hard for you to locate. There's ways to make those more visible, and we're going to use an example here. I like to use Smart Objects, but I have trouble finding it in here. Well, here's Smart Objects, Convert Smart Object. Now that I'm showing it to you in this tutorial, I sometimes have trouble finding it on the menu. If you want to have it really stand out, you can do exactly the same thing. So we're going to go back to Edit, Menus. We're going to keep it on Photoshop Learning here. We're going to scroll down until we find the Layers menu, which is further down here. Here's the Layer menu. We're going to open that up. We're going to go to where it says Smart Object. That's a Smart Filter. That's different, which is right here, Smart Object. Convert to Smart Object. There is a color column over here. And what you can do is come in here and click on this where it says None and change it. I'm going to make it green, which for me means go. And you can click on that and now save. Say, save it to, I want to save it to RTPC Learning. I accidentally clicked on the wrong one, so I want to save it to the correct one. I selected create a new one, so we're going to save it right here by clicking there. Notice the modified went away. Now if I click OK, and I go to Layer, go to Smart Objects, now I have this in green. Well, it's still kind of difficult to find because I have to find the Smart Objects first. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to edit what I just did to make the Smart Objects also green. So come down here to Smart Objects, and we're going to come to the menu item itself, and I'm going to turn it green. So now I have much easier way. Come in here, Layer, I know it's here, click here, go here, and I'm done. So it makes it very simple, very easy for you to find the objects that you want. This is one that, it may be useful, may not be useful, but it gives you a visual way to find things easier, and I find that it helps quite a bit. Typically I use shortcuts, or I don't necessarily go to the Layers menu for that. I typically will use a shortcut, but if I'm creating an action, Actions don't like shortcuts sometimes, so I always go through the menu items when I'm creating an action. And we'll talk about actions way down the road, but actions are basically macros that are created. You click on an action and it runs all of the actions that you have in there, all the menu items. So anyway, that's a good way to do that. So now we'll talk about how to create shortcuts. So shortcuts is probably the most preferred way to get around because it's very easy. Now Photoshop comes with many shortcuts, and so most of the time if you go in here and look, you're going to see a lot that have shortcuts to the side. So a lot of these are going to, you're already going to have the shortcuts. You'll just need to know what they are. But there are items here that have no shortcuts. For example, check spelling or puppet warp or these kinds of things. If you go to image, there are many of these that have no image rotation. There's no shortcut for that. So there's different things in here that maybe you use constantly that you would like a shortcut for. So let's just say, for grins, that we want to import images from a device. We do that all the time. Let's say I'm importing pictures from my camera directly into Photoshop. And you probably don't do that because you probably use Lightroom or a third-party application, but this is just for an example. So when you click on this, it opens up a dialog box for you to begin to import your images. It says here no camera scanner or scanner selected, so that's specifically what that is for. So we're going to create a shortcut for that. So import, you think well, there's lots of shortcuts already out there for and we're going to find that out. But again, we go to edit, keyboard shortcuts. This time takes you to the exact same dialog box, but it automatically has keyboard shortcuts selected here. So we're going to open File. Oh, before I get into this, I need to explain some of this top part of the menu. It's a little bit different. The shortcuts for application menus, so we're only doing shortcuts for all these menus within these major top menu bar up here. But you also have the ability to do shortcuts for panel menus, shortcuts for toolbar, and shortcuts for task spaces. I wanted to bring this up. This is the first time I've seen this. Task space, I know it's probably been here for a while, I just haven't seen it. Because if you click on it, you can go into Select and Mask, Content Aware Fill, or Neural Filters, and there are shortcuts already created for these. So if you need to know, if you use Select and Mask and you don't know what the shortcuts are, you can at least come here and see the shortcuts. And if they don't make sense to you and you would like to change them to something different, then you have that ability here too. But I just wanted to point that out. Task spaces is something that I hadn't realized was here. But we're doing application menus. And you have a couple of check boxes down here. Use legacy undo shortcuts, use legacy channel shortcuts. I've gotten used to, in the past I had gotten used to the legacy stuff, but then when the new ways to do undos and legacy channels, when the new things came around, I've become familiar with those too. So now I don't need to use the legacy undo or the legacy channel shortcuts. So I leave those unchecked, but if you like those and you've been using Photoshop for a while, you can always come back here and select those. But that's what that's about. And then again, we have the same set information over here, the same way to save, and we're going to save it to a new set whenever we're done. So Photoshop up here, you don't see Photoshop, you see it here. This is for preferences. So if you want to go to preferences and create some ways to get to those preference windows, you can do that. You can see here that general is Command K already, and some of these don't have additional shortcuts, but you can always put those in here. But we're looking for File. Again, for the application menu, you see the same thing that you see up here. We're going to go to File. We're going to scroll down to Import, which is right in here somewhere. Generate create. There's import. So we have import and we have images from device. So if we click this, you have this little open box here. There's no shortcut created for it, and then you have this information. If you click on that, it just gives you, there's no information about it because you don't have anything in there, but your information is down here. To edit shortcuts, keyboard, click the new set button, create a copy of selected set, click a shortcut for a command to press the keyboard shortcut to assign, and save the set when you're editing. So it just kind of gives you a step-by-step of how to do this, which is what I'm telling you now too. But let's try, images from device. So let's just try the letter I. Well, you can't just use the letter I because it has already been used. Menu commands must include a command or a F key for their shortcut. So you can't just put a letter I in there, so that's not usable. So if I do Command I, well, it gives you a little caution here, and it tells you down here that Command I is already used and will be removed from image adjustment invert if you accept it. Well, I use Command I a lot to invert different things, usually it's to invert a mask. So I don't want to change that because it's something I use all the time. So let's try Command Option I. Oh, again, you get it. Command Option I is already in use. It's image size. Well, I don't use that very much, but I really don't want to mess it up either. I mean, it's a default. I can always come back to the default if I want to. But if you have some you want to save and some you don't want to save, and you come back to the default, then you've changed everything. So I'm not going to use that. So let's try something else. Let's try Command Control I. Command Control I will work. So Command Control I is here. We're going to accept it. We're going to come up here and we're going to create a new set, and we're going to call this RTPC Photoshop Learning. So we've now saved a new set for our keyboards as well as our menus. So now when I say OK, if I do Command Control I, it pops up my import images from device. So that's basically all there is to creating a keyboard shortcut. If you come in here and look at import, oops, that's why, you have images from device, and you see Command Control I is the shortcut. So it's added that over there to let you know that that's the shortcut for that particular thing. So that's all there is really to creating shortcuts. The thing you have to be careful of is replacing default shortcuts. I know some don't make sense, Command K to get you to general preferences, where does the K come from? Then you have V, takes you to a toolbar shortcut for Move Tool. So V doesn't make sense with Move Tool, but you already have the M, which is for Marquee Tool. So you have to kind of do trade-offs. There's going to be some that are not going to make sense, but you just have to kind of deal with it and just get used to it. So if we couldn't do Command Control I, we may have had to go to something that totally doesn't make sense. But just know after you've used it a while that it just becomes second nature. So that's really it for what I wanted to do and show you about menus. So there's three major things that we talked about. We talked about hiding menus, we talked about highlighting menus, and now we talked about keyboard shortcuts. So hopefully this helps you be able to create some things that will increase your workflow and make life easier for you when you're working in Photoshop.